If you need help, if you need someone to talk to you, the National Suicide Lifeline, we reach it 1-800-273-8255. It's 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-8255. Welcome back to the JKWD podcast, where we hope you are having an awesome day. We just had a great conversation with Brian Tellor, which you'll hear in a little bit. But first, hey, Kelvin, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, Mr. Shear. Thank you very much. I will have you know the weather here today is beautiful and perfect.
Here too, actually.
And that's wonderful. So I have nothing to complain about. I'm loving it.
Great. Well, as you'll hear intermittently through the podcast, Kelvin is having his siding redone. This has been a long time coming. I think we've mentioned on a few podcasts in the last 6 months that the siding is blowing up. And they're fixing that. They're just fixing it very loudly.
And slowly. Yeah.
So you may hear that intermittently, but it shouldn't get in the way of the conversation here.
Luckily, I moved away from the room they were actually banging on at the time. Which,
yeah, true. You did make that good transition.
Oh, my goodness. So how are you, sir?
I'm good. I got back to running, and I ran 4 miles this morning before we got on. 4 miles, got back in time to have a decent breakfast and take the dog out. And you commented that I was looking like it didn't bother me, and I'm like, well, no, I'm not bothered because I got the run in.
Gotcha.
I flashed back to the run a couple of times during our conversation, because I'm not technically in my training season yet for for my races, and so I don't need to hit distance. I don't need to hit time. I went out my door this morning. I said I'm going to run 4 miles. And right around 2 miles, I was like, I could just run home now, and I didn't. I kept going for 4, and my third mile was so slow. It was like my first, my second, and my fourth mile were all within 5 seconds of each other.
Oh wow!
But the third mile was 30 seconds slower than my other slow mile, my other slowest mile. So, you could tell that I was just like, I guess we're done here, but I decided not to be done. And, we talked a little bit about going through the hard stuff and just, turning your brain around and little victories. And we got through it. And, I know that throughout the course of the 5 years that we've been doing this podcast, I often use running as a metaphor or comparison, but it's where I spend a lot of my time and my thought and my effort.
Yeah.
Because it is effort. It's not something I'm good at. At this point, I'm probably not going to get good at it. But that doesn't matter to me. If
you ever hear about me running,
you run the other.
Sure, I'm okay.
Well, that or run the other direction just a little faster.
Yeah, like that.
Don't take time to assess. Just run. And remember, you don't have to be the fastest guy. You just have to be not the slowest.
That is absolutely correct.
But we had a nice conversation with Brian today. We talked about small victories. We talked about the masks we wear. We talked about being of service to others. We talked about getting the help you need, recognizing the help you need, and a lot more. We did
it's just a conversation you get. I think this podcast is one where we talked less in the beginning than
I think Brian went on like a
ever
20-minute
before, because
monologue.
we just asked him. You just asked him to tell his story, and we just sat here
Yeah,
with
and
mouths
he did.
open, going like,
Yeah,
"Wow."
he went, and it's a painful story, but it helped him get where he is so that he can be of service to others who need him. And so, while I wouldn't wish that life on anybody, for who he is, I'm glad he went through it. I'm glad he pushed through it and lived through it too, which was not always a sure thing.
And it's easier for us since he's glad he went through it, because it would have hit him in the end. So it's a good listen, I gotta say.
Yeah, so I'm going to shut up now, and we're going to play some music. On the other side of that, you'll hear our conversation with Brian. Josh and Kelvin World Domination Podcast, where we talk about better humanhood and teach you how to dominate your world. You ready? Here we go. Welcome. Normally we have people start off by telling us their mission and telling us why it's their mission, but I think your story is so intricately tied up in your mission that maybe you should start with your story and then evolve that into your mission.
Okay. All right. So the story is one that's developed over the last 46 years, really. I was born and raised, for the most part, by a single mother. My mom had to work her butt off to put food on the table and do all the things that parents need to do for their kids. Around the age of 8 is when she got into a serious relationship with with a man, and it turned out that he had come from pretty rough background as well. So he was a pretty rough and tough guy, and he didn't sugarcoat much. Unfortunately, it doesn't work well when dealing with small children. And as I got older, it got a little worse. And so there was a lot of emotional abuse. And when I say emotional abuse, I'm a big guy. I've always been a big guy. I was a big kid, and I would get berated for eating the last slice of bologna, and I'd be called a pig or fat, be called lazy, stupid. There's all kinds of just from the ages of about 9 years old to the age of 16. I didn't know what I was going to get when I came home. Keep in mind, my mother's working this whole time. She's out busting her butt, doing the best she can. And so a lot of times I was left home alone with this individual. There was some physical abuse as well, but that wasn't until I got older, and it got to the point. I remember some of the trauma. I remember being dragged out into the front yard and dared to throw a punch. Like, he's like, "Hey, throw a punch. I dare you to throw a punch. Be a man. Punch me." Just so he would have an excuse to retaliate against me. So there was a lot of years, this emotional abuse, sometimes physical abuse. I was broken down to the point where the insecurities and fear that I held they sabotaged me in so many ways. When I was 16, got a little bit bigger, got a little bit older, started working and making my own money, I got the hell out of there. I said, I'm done. I'm not putting up with this anymore. And so I moved out of my mother's house when I was 16. And actually, a buddy of mine and me, we took off and went down to Florida. I had no intentions of coming back from Florida. Keep in mind, I live in Illinois. So I went down to Florida. I said, I'm never going back. I did come back because I wanted to finish high school, and plus I ran out of money. So that doesn't help when you're broke. But I came back, but I stayed on my own. And what followed those years, so for the remainder of my teen years into my 20s, there was, as I look back and reflect now, I know I suffered from a a version of PTSD. There was also insecurities, fears, and depression that set in. But I ran from all those emotions. I didn't want to feel those emotions. I didn't want to be labeled by those emotions. So I tried to mask that pain as best I could. And what that started out with is when I turned 17, 18, I started running around with a crew on the streets, and we were committing crimes and getting into fights, and we were just doing all this stuff that we shouldn't have been doing. And then I got arrested, and I didn't do any time in jail, luckily, but it was enough to get me thinking, okay, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I can't live like I'm living. And actually, shortly after that, a couple of the guys that I ran with, they ended up getting arrested and sent to prison for robbery. So I said, I'm gonna stop being this wild child. I'm gonna stop hanging around with the street element, and I need to get a job. I need to work. I need to think about a family. And so as I got into my 20s, I rushed into a relationship with a woman that had her stuff together. Her parents were still married. She had the American dream, the house, the white picket fence. And I jumped into that relationship. But as with any relationship, you start running into some issues and problems. And instead of dealing with that, my immediate reaction was to seek validation from somebody else, which was other women. And so, as you can imagine, that didn't play out too well. I did end up getting married to that woman, and we had 2 kids. And I settled down for a while, and I just worked. I was working probably 2 or 3 jobs for a while. And so that was enough to keep me preoccupied. But then as we got married and the kids got a little older and life started to slow down a little bit, well, not really slow down, but started to level out a little bit, I returned to that. I felt the depression. I felt the anxiety. And so I ran from it, and I sought validation through other women. And so that ended up, my marriage eventually dissolved. And this was when I was well into my 40s. And I remember waking up, and I would sit on the edge of my bed. And keep in mind, I had a good paying full-time job, but I'd sit on the edge of my bed in the mornings and try to come up with any excuse, any reason to call in sick. How am I feeling today? Do I feel under the weather? Do I have a headache? I'm sitting here trying to talk myself into staying in bed. And then one day, I woke up, I was going through my regular sit on the edge of the bed and woe is me, pity party, and a voice, and I'm not saying it from a paranormal aspect, but this voice in my head said, hey, dummy, you need, there's a lot of successful people in this world that, that they're living the lives that they dream, and you are sitting here on the edge of your bed whining about having to get up and go to work. And you work in the same 24-hour window as everybody else. So what's the difference? And that was when that was the first time in my life where I said, okay, I need to figure this out. And so I started seeking help. And my marriage fell apart shortly after that. We got divorced. And I said, okay, I need to fix myself, because validation from other people, I can't live vicariously through somebody else's opinion of me. I need to learn to love myself. And that's when I really got into healing with counseling, coaching, whatever I could do to try to figure out what was going on in my mind. And once I eliminated all the distractions, all the elements that I was preoccupying my life with, well, that opened the door for depression and anxiety to hit hard. And when I was in 2019, so just a couple years ago, I started having suicidal ideations, and I was thinking about suicide. And I was actually going down into the basement. I lived in a 2-story townhome, and I'd go down in the basement and I'd start looking for places. Where could I hang a rope? Would this hold my weight? And then I scared myself, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm thinking about killing myself. And I got 2 teenage boys. Like, I can't do this. So instead of seeking help for it, I said, I'll just work, I'll go back to what I know. I can work. And I was working 16-hour days between a couple different jobs. And then after about a year of that, my body gave out. Like it was exhausted. It was done. And once I opened up that door and I eliminated the distractions, here came the depression and anxiety again. And on March 5th of 2020, I had a dentist appointment. And I was driving home from the dentist. It was about a 30-minute drive. And I found myself saying, it'd be very easy just to unbuckle my seatbelt, speed up, and hit one of these viaducts, the big concrete surrounding the bridge. And so I unbuckled my seatbelt. I sped up. I started to let the wheel creep over a little bit. And then I would say probably just a few, maybe 20 seconds before impact, I broke down emotionally. I stopped. I didn't do it. Obviously, I'm here talking to you. And I said, I got to go get help. But I didn't know where to get help. So I just showed up at the hospital, a complete mess. I mean, here's this, big bearded man coming in, just weeping and crying and pacing and telling them I'm going crazy. Somebody needs to help me. And that was when I finally, after all these years, I finally got help to address the depression and the anxiety. And I talked to a crisis counselor while I was in the hospital, and she said, I think you need to be hospitalized, but I want it to be your choice. And despite the fear of stigma, despite the fear of being how people would perceive me, I said, I'll do this. I'll hospitalize myself. And so I voluntarily went in. And for anybody that's never been to a mental health facility or hospital, I mean, essentially you're locked, right? They protect you from yourself. So you're on a shared floor with other people that are going through the same things, but you're locked in. You can't freely leave. You can't close your bedroom door. You got to leave it open. They check on you every 15 minutes, things like that. But that was when I finally, in that moment, being locked up, and as I started to get to know the people around me, I was like, I'm not alone. Like all these years, I thought I was alone. Like I was afraid to tell anybody what I was going through because of what they would think of me. And I was a people pleaser. I've always been a people pleaser, and I never wanted to let anybody down. But it was in that moment of brokenness that I could, and then seeing everybody else's brokenness, because there's people that were addicted to drugs, people that had attempted, actually survived a suicide attempt. I remember one young girl, she's probably not much more than 18. She would stand in the doorway and she would shake because she was afraid to come out. And as I started seeing this, I'm like, suddenly my problems felt really small. And I'm like, I'm looking at this the wrong way. This isn't a curse. This isn't this suffering. There's a purpose to this. And that's when I started planting the seeds that I need to help. I need to get out. I need to do something for people that are in the same situation as me, that, for whatever reason, they're not getting the right help. Maybe they're trying to distract. They're trying to, chase off the depression, anxiety, but it doesn't go away. It's there until you finally stand up to it. And that's when I developed this mission that I'm like, I've got to heal. Obviously I got to get to a better place, but once I get there and once I can get back to being myself, I need to focus less on what's happening to me and focus more on what I could do with that to help others. And that's what led me to, I currently have a podcast as well as a coaching business and some other things that I've other creative activities that I've got going on to help that. But really just people, raw vulnerability is, I think, what saved my life. Finally coming forth and saying, you know what, it is what it is. I'm not going to be afraid to share my story. I'm not going to be afraid to tell my story, because through my story, I can help someone else.
I want to go back just to one earlier point in your life and ask you about it, if you have any solid memories of it. There was a time you said you were running around, you got arrested,
Mm-hmm.
and you decided that you couldn't keep doing that. And there are plenty of people who decide they can keep doing that.
Yeah.
What was it in you at that point? Is that the same voice that says, dude, get off your bed and go to work? What is that said, this, whatever this isn't right. Let's do that instead.
So for me, the whole reason I started hanging around the group of guys that I was hanging around with is because I wanted to feel accepted, because of the emotional abuse that I suffered as a kid and a young teenager, and I developed these insecurities. So I was very introverted. I didn't know how to talk to people. And I maybe had, and we moved a lot, so that didn't help, right? So I went to 3 different high schools. I went to 3 different elementary grade schools. So I never got to make friends. I'd make a friend and then we'd move. And I was lucky to make one friend, and it was usually that person coming up to me saying, "Hey, how are you?" Because I was super scared, had really bad social anxiety. But so I started hanging around with these guys because they accepted me. They accepted me for who I was. And but they were doing bad things. And for me, what was the final straw is when I became the guy. I was kind of like the leader, right? I became the leader of the pack, to where if one of them was in trouble, I stood up to help. And we got in a lot of fights and different things, and I was always the one that kind of took the lead on that. And then when I got arrested, nobody was there. Like, here I am sitting, getting ready to be put into a cage, and I can't get a hold of anybody, or the people I can get a hold of is like, "Hey, I need somebody to come bail me out. It's only $100. Oh, sorry, man, I ain't got any money." And how I finally got out, I finally got a hold of a really good friend of mine that I met when I was 14, and he's still my best friend today, even though we don't really see each other very often. But I called him. I'm like, "Hey, I'm in a jam. Can you get $100 together and come bail me out?" And so he did. And that was the day I said, you know what? These guys don't care about me. They only care about me when I'm protecting them, or I'm doing something for them. But when it comes down to me, they're nowhere to be found. And that was the day that I said, I'm not playing this game anymore. And that was my reason for getting out of that lifestyle.
And does that equate at all with where you were at when you were trying not to go to work? I mean, I know that's right where in the War of Art, Steven Pressfield talks about resistance, and it takes many forms, whether it's whether it's something like, oh, well, the dishes need washing again, they're not quite scrubbed right, or I should go walk the dog again, or man, I'm just not feeling exactly right. Is that kind of all hooked in together, like not having that crew around you, that support around you from, at this point, it doesn't have to be from friends, maybe from coworkers, and not building those relationships?
Yeah, certainly it does play into that, because once I got out of, once I grew up and I decided, okay, I need to start working and thinking about my future, and I need to stop running around on the streets. And that's what I did. I went to work and I made money, but I was still very insecure. I still had social anxiety. Funny thing is, I've had jobs where I was a manager and I could manage people well, and I could be an assertive manager, and I did my job well. But when it came to personal relationships, really what I've come to discover now, where I'm at in my life, is it was all fear-based: fear of being rejected, fear of failure, fear of not being accepted. And so I kept my distance. I really didn't. I got together with the woman that ended up becoming my wife we started dating when I was 8. I started dating when I was 18 because we started dating when I was kind of running around with the crew. And then I got out of that lifestyle by 21. Her and I moved in together. We got married when I hit my late 20s, and then we started a family. And this whole time this is going on, I really had no friends. I would work, I would come home, I would just go do my own thing. The relationship I was in, and even the marriage, we were very distant in the house. And I think there was some because of my mindset, and I really had a victim mentality. So anytime something bad happened, I was like, let's start the pity party. Let's start the woe is me. Poor Brian's got to go work 3 jobs to so his kids have a good future. It's all just a culminate, and it's even gotten it was like a snowball. If you push a snowball down a mountain, right, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and pretty soon you have an avalanche. And so all of those moments in my life were leading up to that day where I was, seconds away from potentially ending my life. And so, yeah, the same voice was talking to me at 40 years old that had been talking to me all throughout my life. The biggest difference is by the time I was 40, I was running out of distractions. Like I can't keep hiding from this. And that's when it really started to take hold and grow bigger.
So I'm in a better area here, and hopefully you don't hear incredible demolition going on behind me. But that's a powerful story. It's a powerful story. Most people, I know a lot of people who are not in the exact same place you were, because that's a tough word, exact, right?
Yeah.
But people who actually face much smaller obstacles or challenges in their life, who can't seem to get past those little ones. And the thing that you have overcome, and I don't know, have you overcome it, or you manage it? What phraseology would you use to describe?
I would say, to date, even though I feel great, I wake up, I have a positive mental attitude, I'm ready to attack the day, I'm going after my dreams. There is still that little seed that's planted. It's still there. And I think you're kind of like a gardener, right? You keep picking the weeds out of the garden. The weeds are going to keep popping up. As long as there's good soil and it's fertile, those weeds are going to pop up. You've just got to stay ahead of it. You got to manage those weeds, whether it's big or small. And so we never, in my opinion, we never stop growing. And that's so kind of going back a little bit, when I had that coming to Jesus moment, as I called it, when I was 40, and this voice said, "Hey man, you need to, why are you sitting here like this? And there's people out in this world that have achieved things." That's when I started saying, okay, I got to figure out what's going on. And at first my focus was on money. I thought money was going to cure all my problems, right? This depression, this anxiety, this lack of quality of life, feeling like I had a quality of life. I said, money's going to take care of all that, but money doesn't take care of any of that. I've been at the top of the mountain. I've been and I've been in the bottom of the mountain with money. And, your mental game is going to be whatever it is, whether you're high or low on the financial scale. What I come to find is it was fear. Everything, if you're not accomplishing something, if you can't get over an obstacle in your life, there's an element of fear in there. That fear is greater than your desire to heal or your desire to change. And so fear is a bully, right? And you've got to stand up to that bully. And once you do, it's amazing what happens. So for me, when I turned 40, I started studying it. And when I finally came to realize that it's not money, it is purpose, it is passion, it is people. I had a huge fear of public speaking. And so I said, I'm going to tackle this first. This is right up at the top of my list. So I joined an organization that helps with public speaking, and I discovered, man, I like this. I like getting up in front of people and talking. And once I stood up to that bully, it got small. You know, he took a back seat. All of a sudden, it was like, okay, you don't have this power over me. And then I said, okay, well, what other areas of my life do I need to, look at and grow in? And so once I'd find that obstacle, I'd find that challenge. Okay, why is it a challenge? And you've got to go back in your history to dig out the reason. But once you understand why you're stuck, then you can start taking the steps to overcome. And another thing, as I say, where I went off, once I overcame my fear of public speaking, I said, well, I always had as a child, I always wanted to be a boxer. So I joined a gym and I started training as a boxer. I started training when I was 42 years old, right? I started training as a boxer. And what I found in that gym, I never went on to fight professionally or even amateurly. But what I found was a sense of community, because I got into that gym and I realized everybody was there not only to work on themselves, but to help others work on themselves. And within 6 months, I started coaching some of those folks and the newer folks coming in on boxing. And so it's like, wow, okay, this is a whole new dynamic. I've got a supporting cast around me, people that don't care, I mean, they care about you, but your history doesn't matter. It's about showing up every day and doing the hard things, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. But was your speaking organization Toastmasters?
Yes, it was, actually.
Oh, good. Toastmaster.
Okay, yeah, fellow Toastmaster.
Got it going on. Excellent. Once you're past the fear, and I don't know if you're ever past the fear, you're just not letting it master you. But
right.
After you did all that, at what point did you decide that you wanted to be a life coach? I was looking at your website a little bit earlier. And how did you go about starting that for you and have the confidence to do that?
I would say once I got into boxing, so at the age of 42, that is when I realized I wanted to help people. I didn't know what that looked like at the time. I just knew I wanted to help people. And then as I got into speaking, well, what I did is I had a mentor that said, speak from your heart. If you speak from your heart, you don't have to worry about memorizing your whole talk. You just speak from your heart. And that was super scary, because I'm like, if I speak from my heart, I got to talk about the abuse I dealt with as a kid. I got to talk about the crime I committed and, was arrested for. But I said, you know what? Who cares? Because Toastmasters, kind of give them a plug, is you join a club. Well, it's a safe space, right? You're supposed to be able to, you're there to develop. And so I felt like my story, I was safe to tell my story there. And so I got real vulnerable and I told my story. And I told it in different variations through different talks. And then pretty soon I found other people saying, hey, your story, we want to hear more of this. And I realized that there's power in vulnerability. And so that at that point in time, between the power of community in my boxing gym and the power of vulnerability that I had learned in my speaking, when I put those two together, it's like, okay, we can change the world. I mean, maybe one person at a time, but if we can help somebody be unapologetically vulnerable and surround themselves with the right people that are going to help them foster the right mindset, well, great things are going to happen. It wasn't until January of this year, because 2020 was the year. I mean, depression hit me. It hit me hard. And even after I got out of the hospital, I still struggled. Like I still had all the, I sleeping all day, up all night, sitting at 3 a.m, contemplating my life and what, the choices I've made. But and of course I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't want to speak to that point, but for me, medicine's help regulate some of those brain waves. The chemicals help balance it out in the brain a little bit. But in January of this year, or really late 2020, I said, you know what, this depression is not a curse, it's a blessing. And so every day I'd wake up and, I felt like crap and I didn't want to move. I'm like, how could I make today better than yesterday? How can I make myself better today than I did yesterday? And that is what started the snowball for me to heal and recover. And then, by 2021, January 1st, I was getting up and I'm ready to go attack the day, because now I had a sense of purpose. I knew that my story, I went through what I went through because somebody out there needs to, they feel alone and they're dealing with depression and they're thinking about killing themselves and they feel alone. They need to hear my voice or someone else's story to say, hey, I've been there. You're not alone. It's going to get better. Trust me. But you've got to take the right steps to get, to make it better. And so that was really when I decided I'm going to become a coach. And there was no more of this imposter, right? Sometimes earlier on, I'd feel like an imposter, especially in the boxing gym. 6 months, I'm training, and all of a sudden I'm being asked to help train other people. Who am I? I've been boxing for 6 months. Well, there's that fear again, right? Fear of failure. Once I said, who cares? I know how to, throw pads and I know the numbers to call out for them to, jab, cross, hooks, all that. I know this. Let me just do it. I'm not an imposter. I mean, I'll do the best I can with what I got. And that's, for me, that was the change. That was the defining moment when I finally said, you know what? Just start where you are, do what you can do, and keep growing and getting better.
That's it. That's a big lesson. That's a big lesson for people to learn, because it can feel overwhelming just to step out a little bit. So how you doing now? So you got your active coaching, your imposter syndrome is gone, and how are you relating to the world?
So everything's going. Everything's going well. I felt really good this year, 2021. I felt really positive and energetic and motivated to take on the world. I started a podcast. I started that actually while I was still going through the depression. That was one of those deals where it's like, I couldn't find that voice out there to tell me it's okay to not be okay. I used to hate that saying. I had a girlfriend that she's like, it's okay not to be okay. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, you got to be. But then when I went through depression, I'm like, okay, it is okay not to be okay. As long as you're taking the steps to be okay. But so I started the podcast because I just couldn't find that voice of comfort. And so originally it was just going to be me talking, but that has now turned into stories. I bring other people on to tell their stories, what they went through, how they overcame it, where they're at today. So much like I'm doing on this show, that's what my show is dedicated for. And then the coaching is kind of just a sidebar to that. But everything is going really well. I've been getting a lot of great feedback. People are, it's a slow process, right? You can only change, one person at a time on most occasions, but, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of healing going on around not only my coaching, but the podcast as well. And the writing, I write as well. So.
Awesome. Josh, did you have anything you wanted to?
How do you feel now helping other people? Is that boosting you at all in your?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. As humans, we want to feel loved, we want to feel accepted, and we want to feel like we're serving a higher purpose, higher calling. And for me, a life of service, I mean, it is amazing what living your life to help others, when you have that mindset, you wake up every day, it's like a challenge. You wake up and it's like, okay, I got to help somebody today, if they want my help. Obviously you can't force that on anybody. I did a little bit. I was helping with a soup kitchen here in my town, and so they feed the homeless at lunch and dinner time, and so I was helping out. This was back in 2020 when all the doctors, I'm all meted up, and they're like, you need to get out of the house. So, okay, let me volunteer. Because I've always loved being in service of others, because I've coached youth sports for years and years and years, which is funny because you'd think somebody that there was like two personas. There was the depressed, sad, lonely, feel like a failure Brian, and then there was this mask I would put on, and I'd be coaching, basketball or baseball or whatever the case may be. But I always loved that aspect of helping someone else. And so when I was helping out with this soup kitchen, and these homeless folks would come up, and I'd have conversations with them, and they would laugh, and I'm like, man, you live on the streets and you're in a great mood. And they're like, hey, just kind of let it go. I mean, every day try to get a little bit better. And I was just amazed that folks that went through something like that, they still had this sense of humor and sense of positivity about them. And so, yeah, it's just waking up every day knowing that I have at least have an opportunity to help somebody is motivation. And that's what really drives me and gets me excited.
The ability to put on those masks that you talked about is so important sometimes, but it can be so harmful. You talk about working 16-hour days. Well, there's 16-hour days that you get to wear a mask, and you don't have to feel how you feel, because that's not what you want. And then you get home alone, and now you have to. Now you understand how you feel, and you don't want to feel that way. So you just want another way to put that mask on. So ripping that off, being able to rip that off now has got to be huge for you. And it's great that you managed to get out of the house and serve the way you did last year. This is for so many people. 2020 was a year where they had to live with themselves, and they had to live with their families the way they are, and they just could not. I can't imagine getting out of the hospital right as everything shut down. Because I know that we shut down here in Eastern Georgia right at St. Patrick's Day. So that was right. That was right when you were going into the hospital.
Yeah, I say I got out of the hospital I went in on March 2nd. I think I got out on March 9th. And in my area, everything shut down on March 15th. So it was like boom, boom, boom. And yeah, that was hard, because when you're stuck alone and you've got to be in your own thoughts, it's tough.
And that was the worst place for you at that point, right?
But I learned to celebrate small victories.
Good.
Because I remember a time in 2020 where just getting up and taking a shower was a huge thing for me. And so I'd get up, and I made it my goal today. I'm just going to take a shower before 9 p.m. And if I did it, hey, that's a victory. I celebrated, right? I celebrated that small little victory. And then I just kept adding to it, making it bigger, challenging myself more and more.
That's a big principle, celebrating small victories. I'm a coach also, and sometimes people get tired of it all the time positive guy. Mm-hmm. I've got one person just like, okay, I don't need the positive guy today. I just want just listen to what I've got to say. And I'm like, okay, we'll work that out for you. But it's got to end. But by the same token, over the course of our relationship, when she does finally admit something's positive, she likes to come and call her, okay, you're my positive guy, so got to let you know this happened. I counted that as a win. We had a lot of conversation on taking your own life, We've had a couple of guests that talk about taking your own life. What advice do you have for people who will hear your voice right now if they're considering taking their own life?
If that's even a thought, and if it's, and I'm just saying, if it's just, it could just be a thought. Like whether you've actually scouted out how you would do it. I mean, if you just in your mind, if you have the inkling that you'd be better off gone, I would say stop. Number one, ask for help. Be willing to ask for help. I know that's very, very hard for people. Talk to, there's obviously, suicide hotlines, crisis hotlines, talk to a doctor, talk to a coach, talk to a psychologist, ask for help. That's where it started for me. There just came a day where I finally said, I've got to ask for help. And it happened to be the day where I almost took my own life, but I stopped, I paused, and it's like, okay, let me go ask for help today. And if it doesn't get better, then I'll revisit this, this idea, but it got better. But ask for help, number one. Number two, know that you're not alone. Because when I went into the hospital, I was surrounded. I mean, everybody there is struggling. And hearing their stories and being able to offer, even if it was just a shoulder to cry on, or I remember there was a couple times where, somebody's having a breakdown. It's like, hey, I don't know if this may or may not work, but you want to just go over here and sit on the couch and pray? Like, maybe it'll work, maybe not. I mean, what else do we have to lose? But so just knowing there was somebody there to either care about me or me to care about them. So you're not alone. I know you feel alone. When it gets to that point of suicide, for me, it was like, I have no other solution. I'm in this by myself, but that's not the case. Not everybody is going to reach out to you and check on you every day. That's why it's important to find your people, right? Who that is. So stop, take a breath, ask for help before you make any irrational decisions. Know that you're not alone, and then be willing to be completely vulnerable, to share whatever you need to share, whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence. Be willing to talk about that. It's amazing what happens to the mind once you get that story out. The first time I got really vulnerable and I told my story, the weight that was taken off of my shoulders was massive. It was like, wow, like I feel different, and all I had to do was just be completely vulnerable. Suicide is, keep in mind, I had 2 teenage boys. I have 2 teenage boys. They're still teenage boys. Okay. As I cleared my head and I think about it, I mean, what would their life be like had I gone through with it? Would they have recovered from it? Maybe, maybe not. They may have gone down the same road. What about the people, that do care about me, that, I can't imagine what they would be thinking, because what's going to come to their mind. First thing is, what could I have done differently? And and they're going to live with that guilt. And so there is a way out, and there is a way to heal. And there's plenty of people to contact to help that. Heck, I would say reach out to me. I'm not going to charge you a penny or anything like that. Just reach out to me if you need to, and I'll be more than happy to talk with you about it, because it's just, oh man, to be at that point in your life is just such a lonely, scary feeling, and it's hard, but there is a rainbow right at the end of it.
Awesome.
I want to transition us out of this for a sec, because you said 3 words that Kelvin says a lot, and I was surprised that he didn't immediately throw up his arms. But you said the words positive mental attitude, and that's a phrase that's all over Kelvin's website. So if you too, you especially, Brian, because you're here as our guest, we want to hear your story. But Kelvin, also, if you two will riff on what that means and how you get it, I want to hear that conversation.
For me, when I think positive mental attitude, it is all about reframing your thoughts. So you wake up, and let me try to think of a good example that would maybe be a modern day example. But you wake up and you just, you don't feel that you got it in you, right? You don't want to go to work. You don't want to deal with the kids. You don't want to deal with your spouse, whatever the case may be. If you sit there and you stew on what you don't want, well, you're going to get more of what you don't want. You're going to go down that rabbit hole. But if you can reframe your thought and you wake up and you say, oh man, today I got to go out and I got to mow the grass and it's been raining. My grass out here is probably over my ankle right now because all we've had is rain. And it's not an easy lawn to mow. But if I think of it in a different way, well, my yard's going to look nice once I'm done. I'm going to get my exercise, right? My doctor's always telling me I need to get my steps in. So if I push mow, I'm going to get. For me, it's all about reframing your thoughts and finding the good in the bad. And at least that's for me. And I feel like once you do that, once you start really reframing the way you think of something that you have a negative approach to, if you can find the positive in it, it just then pretty soon it's like practicing a sport, right? You exercise that muscle and then pretty soon it becomes just a part of your day, just a part of your routine and what you do. And so for me, that's, I think, the crux of positive mental attitude.
And for me, I started hanging around with people who thought positively. The thing is, when you start thinking positively, you start thinking of possibilities, not liabilities. What is possible in the world? And when you look at the stuff around us, when you look at the technology, when you look at, there's people around who have no limbs, but they're running, they're running marathons. What is possible in the world? And having a positive mental attitude means more. If you look for a way, one will show up. If you just believe it's possible to get out of it, it is an amazing thing. I'm a big law of attraction guy. So every time something crazy happens to me, I'm going like, yeah, I know what I was programmed for that. Mm-hmm. You magnetize into your life what you hold in your thoughts. Illusions, Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah, best book on the planet. That's me. So I like to help people think of what could happen. Now, does it happen all at once? No. Are you going to walk down the street and somebody's going to drop a couple mil in your pocket? No, most likely not. But, you may meet that person who's looking for someone that can do something you can do, and you can end up with a purpose. You can help someone else. Whenever I can help someone else feel good about the fact that you're just still breathing, it works for me. I'm good with that. And because, goodness knows, I don't know. I used to have some tough times. Never the type of life you've described for you earlier on. Although my father was a minister, so I had some tough days. But I put out a meme last week. I didn't do it. I found it. It says, a negative mind cannot bring you a positive life.
Yeah.
So unless you can think in that direction, and even if you're thinking of, I'm going to find somebody soon who's going to be able to help me with this. I'm going to look, because there's positive people all around. Now, some of them just talk, and other ones will stop and listen and see what's going on with you. And all you need, what is it? Who is it? Coach Wooden. Never let what you can't do interfere with what you can do. That's one of my biggest. It's one of my biggest things. So when you can do a little bit, it will breed more good. So that's what positivity means to me. It's not like, oh, I'm going to wave my hands and everything's going to be better, but it's going to get better. Marie Forleo. Everything is figure outable, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's me. So.
No, I agree. I mean, I think, what you said, it flows a lot into my my thoughts of it as well. With the law of attraction, you had mentioned that, and I do believe in it. I don't necessarily believe in it in the way that it's presented on shows like The Secret or anything like that, or books like The Secret. Right. But I do truly believe that if you just, like you said, you get up with, you put it in your head that, hey, I'm going to find the good in the bad, even as if it's just a small, tiny bit. You just begin, you exercise that muscle, that brain muscle, and it becomes a part of your day. And yeah, there's like limitless possibilities of what could happen if you just approach the life's challenges with the right mindset. Right. Even if it's hard to do, because I know it's hard. Some people say, well, you could just sit there and tell yourself over and over again that you're happy. Well, okay, I've tried that in the past and it didn't work. But what did work is when I woke up and said, okay, this whole I am happy incantation or whatever is not working. Let me, I remember a day when I was, after I started speaking and I was getting comfortable around people again, I got to work my 9-to-5 job, and instead of walking in the door with my head down and looking at the ground, I said, I'm going to look at people. I'm going to say hello, even if I don't know them. And so I did that one day, and I had my head up, and I was like, hi, good morning. Hey, and man, when I got in the building, I'm like, I feel good. Like just that little bit of getting outside of my comfort zone, right, and interacting with people, I was like, man, I feel pretty good. And, the rest of the day was a great day because I made a decision to do something that was hard for me.
Yeah. And a lot of people are walking across that same parking lot scared to say hi to somebody because they don't know what they're going to get. So,
yeah,
I do it most around Christmas, but just speaking to people for no reason, because around the big holidays, you have permission to talk to people you don't know.
Right. Yep.
Because it's a holiday, right? How you doing? Have a great day. And it works. And it makes me feel better because I got outside of me at the time. And those times, if somebody doesn't say anything back, I know, well, they probably got more on their mind than I got on mine. So I'm going to let them go, but at least they know somebody wanted to give them, random act of kindnesses too. Like Josh and I were both in a group called MKMMA, Master Key Mastermind Alliance. And one of the things they did when I went through that course, they started talking about random acts of kindness, stuff like going to the supermarket. And if you see an old lady or a woman with kids or something like that, and you're walking past their vehicle and they got a choice between putting their kid in the car and taking the cart back, right? When they first told me about that, I said, that is just one of the most ludicrous things I've ever heard. And a couple of days later, I was going in the store and this lady was just putting this precious little thing in the car. And I said, ma'am, you want me to take that back for you? And she's like, you would think I'd give her money. and I do that now. Older people who were, this woman, she probably had a hard time walking the cart to her car in the first place. Would you like me to deliver that for you? Yes, I'll do that. I did it one day and the lady says, oh, it is good. I cleaned it off with that alcohol stuff so you don't have to wipe it down. You can just use it. So she felt good. I'm like, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So just little stuff like that can make a big difference in somebody's life. And when you just speak to, you don't have to stop. If you can manage to look at them, say, hello, hope you're having a great day, you just kind of validated them.
There was a quote that I learned in the boxing gym that I don't know who to attribute it to because I can't remember who said it originally, but it makes so much sense when you think about it in the grand scheme of life. Mm-hmm. So somebody said, I don't fear the man that has been boxing or has been boxing and training for a year. I fear the man that has been training on his jab for a year. And I'm butchering the quote. It's much better than that. But basically the contention is if you just start small and you just practice, like with a jab in boxing, you just, I mean, pretty soon, I worked out with a guy, he knocked a guy out with his jab because he just practiced it over and over again. Instead of trying to get it all accomplished at one time, just focus on little aspects, and eventually that's going to craft your mental game to whatever that is you're doing, whether it's boxing, studying, whatever. You just got to practice over and over again with the small things and just keep adding to your repertoire.
All the time. Josh, did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I just wanted to listen to you guys talk about
positivity. Oh yeah.
And being positive doesn't mean you have to wake up I mean, there's days I still wake up and I'm like, it's just a matter of not staying in that. I still have bad days, but you don't have to stay in that.
I generally wake up in at least a high neutral,
Yeah.
just to go from there. And then if I have a chance to make somebody feel good, I do a daily motivational thing. And so I have an opportunity each day for someone to write me back after receiving this and go, hey, really like what you had to say this morning. Thank you. They helped me a lot. And it's like, okay, I'm good for the day. Sometimes I'm good for the week. Just because it really doesn't take a lot of them. One, if I could help one person feel better about today, I win.
Yeah.
For me.
No, I agree.
So that's it.
Brian, how is it being in your head now? How is it today?
I mean, it's a lot different today. If you've known me in my, any time before the age of 44, I was shy, very standoffish, very quiet. A lot of people interpreted that as I didn't care. I wasn't friendly, things like that. But today I'm still an introvert. I still like my alone time, but I'm much more extroverted. I am comfortable speaking with people. I can start a random conversation and not feel awkward. And when I have those bad days, instead of dwelling in it or running from it and trying to hide from whatever that negative emotion is, I just face it head on, just, like I would in the boxing ring, right? You got your opponent that's standing out. My opponent's not physical, it's mental. And so if I'm having a bad day and I catch myself having a bad day or having bad thoughts, negative thoughts, it's like, okay, I need to reframe it. What is this? What is the good that can come from this if I let it? And so that's my approach to every day, is just to wake up and be willing to see things in a different perspective. And that, I mean, that's, kind of like Kelvin said, I mean, that once you get that mindset to where, you're focusing on the good, it's just, man, just opportunities open up like you wouldn't believe. And then you feel better because it's like, oh man, I didn't know I had that in me, or, oh, I didn't know that opportunity was going to come my way. And so it's, my day, every day I wake up, I try to be, I know gratitude's thrown out there a lot and it's talked about, but I truly am grateful for what I have. And I've also found gratitude in the times that I struggle and suffer, because I know that something good can come from it if I'm willing to let it, and I'm willing to work for it.
I like the part about if I let it. Because a lot of us, a lot of people, I mean, they don't let it. They don't want to believe it. Sometimes it's easier to feel bad than it is to seek to feel good. It doesn't take near as much work to stay down as it does to actually get up. So, the path of least resistance is not always the best way to go. So like I said, I wake up at a high neutral, I don't get up singing and shouting and stuff, but, I don't worry about much. I get up, I look out the window, see what the weather's going to be like. And I go like, okay, that's what he got to work with today. I complain every once in a while. But basically, no, I like the things that you have said. I would say I'm sorry for what you've gone through, except the contribution you are able to give right now is huge. And someone like me, I'm a positive guy, but you've been through a whole different experience. I can't relate to the experience per se that you've gone through. I can't coach from that point except intellectually.
Right.
You have bona fide life experience you can speak from that I can never touch. I can get most people on a lot of stuff, but you come from a place I've never been, so you can speak much more authoritatively.
Yeah, and I used to be like, oh, why did this happen? I used to be downright pissed off about it, but as I've grown, and especially over the last few years, it happened to me. I can't change the past. Would I have loved to grown up in a different environment? Yeah, I guess there's a part of me that would, but then at the same time, I've met a lot of good people just through podcasts, whether it's my podcast or somebody else's, or in the hospital facility. I mean, I would have never met these people had those things not happen to me. And those little blessings that everybody brings into your life. It's like, well, if everything would have been great and would have had them, grew up in a rich family that was loving and all that, which it would have been a great life, I guess, but what are you missing out on? If everything's given to you, if everything is just you wake up and there's nothing wrong with your day, which I can't imagine anybody lives like that. But if there is somebody out there that just wakes up and every day it's kittens and rainbows, then I think they're missing out. To be honest with you, I think they're missing out on the good stuff.
I'm gonna bear that in mind.
Yeah.
I'll bear that in mind.
Well, I think the two don't live together very well. The everything handed to you, everything perfect, and as an adult in the world, having a clear, positive mind. I don't think they're compatible. I think you have to suffer a little. I think you have to meet challenges and beat challenges in order to find some fulfillment.
Yeah. I mean, that's, man, everything we deal with. I mean, that builds up character, right? You've heard that, you buy an old farmhouse, right? And it's got some beat up walls and the hardwood floors are worn out. And what does the realtor tell you? This house has got character. And yeah, okay, it does.
Absolutely.
It's been through a lot. And I've got character. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and your street value is really high, I gotta say.
My floors may be a little creaky and my walls may need some patching, but my golly.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being here. You've got your podcast and your coaching. You will have a link to the website and everything. Where do you hang out on social? Able to find you.
Yeah, I'm getting better at being social, getting better at being on social, but Brian Tellor, just my name. You can find me on Instagram. I have Conquering Everest podcast Facebook page, so facebook.com/Conquering Everest podcast. Of course, my website, conqueringeverest.com, is you can find links to reach out to me directly or listen to the podcast. And where else am I at? Twitter. Just my name again, Brian Tellor, there on Twitter. So, I'm there. I'm active. Anybody can reach out to me if they want to. I will respond. I'm not really good about making new posts every day, but I'm there.
We are both right there with you.
Yeah, I'm getting better. I'm figuring it out.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that we didn't get to that you had hoped to talk about today?
No, I mean, I think it was a really good conversation, and I just appreciate the opportunity to share my story out there a little bit. And if there's, like I said, if anybody's out there listening that is feeling, feeling like they're coming, they hit a wall and they can't go any farther, and especially if they're feeling like, they're debating whether or not they need to be breathing. I would say, like I said, you're not alone, and there's a lot of good people out there that want to be in your corner and want to help you. It's just about getting the right people around you and then being willing to do the hard things to feel better.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being here, and you have a great rest of your day. We'll shoot you an email when this is up.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. Show notes and more at jkwdpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, and we will see you next week. Bye!
A Better Humanhood production.